Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sunny Summers, and I'm with the Oregon Department of Agriculture. I am the department's Cannabis Policy Coordinator, if you haven't seen me or worked with me before. Today we have Elizabeth Savory, also with ODA, and Rachel Hankins, located at OSU, but I always get the name wrong, so I will let her introduce herself. Before we get started, I would like to provide a couple of reminders / updates that folks have been sending us email questions about. Number one, renewal applications for the 2020 growing season will likely be available mid to late November. When we have those applications available and online, we will send an email to the Hemp listserv. If you are not already signed up for that, you can go to oda.fyi/subscribe. And then the second question that I still am receiving a number of emails about is, with the ability to continue to operate under the 2014 Farm Bill, is Oregon going back to a Delta 9 THC only for pre-harvest testing? And I would just like to remind everybody that Oregon adopted rules in May of 2019, so last year, that went into effect January 1st of this year, changing the pre-harvest test to a total THC. And so that state law does not change with the extension under the Federal Congressional Appropriations Act. So with that, I am going to turn the time over to Rachel and have her start her presentation. Thank you very much.
So I'm Rachel Hankins. I'm with the Oregon Seed Certification Service, and I am the Hemp Program Coordinator there. And I have a brief presentation that I'm going to go through, and then I'll leave time for questions. And I think the way we're doing questions is through the chat, and then Sunny will read them to us. So let me get this set up. I'm not super familiar with this platform, so hopefully I'm doing everything right.
Looks good so far, Rachel.
Okay. Oh, whoops, wrong button. Okay, there we go. So, certified hemp. So, we're going to talk about who certifies hemp, what it is, when you can certify hemp, why you would want to or plant certified hemp, and how you can go about that. So again, my name is Rachel Hankins. If you want to contact me, email is rachel.hankins@oregonstate.edu. So what certification is it's an independent third-party varietal certification. And we are housed under the AOSCA schemes, which is Association of Seed Certifying Agencies. There's one agency in each state that's tasked with seed certification. So sometimes I find it easier to start with what seed certification is not. So I'm going to go over a few examples of what it is not. So I went to Google and I typed in certified hemp seed, and I got thousands of hits of certified seed for sale, which were mostly false. So one of them was certified germination rate testing. Germination is part of the certification testing requirements, but just having a germination through a state lab or a certified lab is not actually certified seed. This one is talking about phyto certification, which is a requirement in some instances. I'll let Elizabeth handle that, but just because you have a phyto certificate does not mean you have seed certification. This one I found on a website, which I thought was really great because the logo even is out of date, but they said they're certified through the Oregon State University Seed Program, and they have germination reports. Again, OSU Seed Lab does do germination, which is required for certification, but that's not seed certification. And again, just because you're USDA compliant does not mean you're certified seed. And USDA organic is a different type of certification. That is a certification of your process of how you produce the seed. It's not actually certifying the seed itself to the variety. And this was my favorite one. The licensed Illinois seed supplier certified CBD industrial hemp seeds. There's some misspelling in here, and there's a lot of misinformation. I actually contacted Illinois about this one, and they were going to have them change their phrasing on it. So what seed certification is it's blue tag certified seed. Most people understand the blue tag terminology, but this is a great quote from Pat Miller from ASTA. And I totally just forgot what ASTA stands for. But a bag of certified seed will have an additional tag, also known as a blue tag. That tag denotes that it has been certified for genetic purity and varietal identity. Seed certification standards are established by the Association of Official Seed Certifying Agencies and administered at the local level by seed certifying agencies. The end goal is to enable seed companies to produce and market genetically pure seed. Requirements for producing certified seed include special land requirements, planting eligible stock, field inspections, proper seed labeling, and meeting. I keep clicking the thing and it brings my picture up, not the actual screen that I'm reading. So meeting standards based on complete lab analysis. By purchasing certified seed, you are assured of coordinated, professional, and unbiased field inspections and laboratory testing. Seed buyers have an assurance that the designated seed has met purity standards related to a known description across seed lots and years of production. So, who does seed certification? In Oregon, seed certification is handled by Oregon Seed Certification Service. We are housed under the Crop and Soil Science on the Corvallis campus, and we operate under the umbrella of AOSCA, the Association of Seed Certifying Agencies. And so the way that works is that they set all of the minimum standards for various crops, and Oregon can choose to set their standards higher than those if they want. And most of our seed crops are set at higher levels than the AOSCA minimums, just because Oregon is really well known for producing quality seed, and we really want that blue tag to mean something. You can see an example of a tall fescue tag there on the screen. The certified hemp tags, when we actually have a certified hemp variety, we're not quite there yet. We'll talk about that in a bit. That's what they'll look like, except for instead of tall fescue, it'll say industrial hemp or feminized industrial hemp. In the center of the screen, you see the experimental seed tag, and that's really what we're operating under right now. We are doing field inspections and seed tests on hemp seed, but we are still waiting for some approvals to come through from our National Variety Review Board. And once those happen, then we'll have blue tags. But right now we're still operating this experimental seed stage. We have worked with several states to accept this seed as certified, even though technically it's not a variety yet. So because when I say we certify to a variety, we're really making sure that the production that we're inspecting matches what that variety is supposed to do or supposed to look like. So if it's supposed to be dark green, medium height, very small, thin leaves, and we go out there and the variety is broad leaves, light green, and above my head, then it doesn't match the variety description and we can't certify that to a variety. Varieties either have to be accepted through our National Variety Review Board or through the Plant Variety Protection Office with either Plant Variety Protection or PTO, plant patent. There are benefits to both of them, having accepted through the review board or through the Plant Patent Office. We do have a list on our website at the very bottom of this screen. That is the companies that currently have experimental seed in Oregon. There's 2 companies on the list so far, but I recommend you bookmark that page because we've got a couple more that are super close. And once they are get the white tags, then they'll be on that list as well. And again, there's one of these in every state. So if you have questions about you have certified seed from another state, will we accept it? Will they accept our certified seed? You can reach out to me and I'm happy to contact the state, or you can reach out to the state you're shipping it to, and they can contact me with questions. We all work very well together. Interagency certification happens all the time. So over the last year, I've gotten a lot of calls about, I have this hemp seed, it's harvested, it's in my barn, can I certify it? And the answer to that is no, that seed is not eligible because we have to do our field inspections or greenhouse inspections on it. So really, you need to start certifying your seed at planting or even before that. So if you have something that you think is a good variety, something that's, we call it distinct, uniform, and stable, and you want to start putting that through certification, reach out to me, contact me, and we'll start you on the process, because the timing of the inspections is critical. And we have to start with the verification of the seed stock that you used. So most likely everything right now is being planted with breeder seed. So we have to have permission from the breeder or the owner of the variety that you can produce that as certified seed. And then we go through our field inspections. We have 3 inspections. We have one when the female flowers are present and the pollen donors haven't started pollinating yet. The second one is when the female flowers are receptive and the pollen donor is actively pollinating. And we do a 3rd inspection when off-type flowers are present, usually around seed set, most likely right about the time that you take your pre-harvest sample. I'll come out again and do a last final inspection to make sure everything looks good. At those inspections, we're looking for isolation. We're looking for any off-type plants. We're making sure your production is uniform, and we're verifying that the seed set. A lot of times when these are hybrids, we just want to make sure that that hybridization happened. If you have a field production, we're more concerned about weeds, because certified seed does have a weed seed requirement. We'll talk about that in a minute. So far, most of our production is greenhouse production, because certified seed requires a 4-mile isolation from any other cannabis plants. And that's not even if they're pollinating or not, that's just other plants, period. So most of it's happening in greenhouses. You can do what we call a pollen exclusion plan. So you can say, hey, my greenhouse has HEPA filters, we have double locked doors, no pollen's getting in, no pollen's getting out. Or you can say, we're doing off-season production. So yes, we understand that there's someone with a license that's 3 miles from us, but it's November, they have an outdoor grow, we're in a greenhouse, there's no natural pollen out there. And the reason why we have that isolation set so high is because that is what the Hemp Advisory Committee wanted to set it as. The AOSCA standards are fairly high as well, but we set ours a little bit higher because there was concern about possible contamination with the feminized seed, and we really wanted to make sure that that feminized seed stayed feminized. And the Hemp Advisory Committee is made up of people from the hemp industry, and they help set our guidelines. Every year we meet. This year, I think we're meeting on November 12th, the day after Veterans Day. We're doing a Zoom meeting this year. If you want to participate in that, the public is welcome. Only the committee members get to vote, but we love to have input from everybody so we can make sure that everybody's voice is heard. If you want to attend that, just let me know and I'll get you a Zoom link for that. So after we go through all of the greenhouse inspections, then you have to have a seed test done. You have to clean your seed at a certified seed warehouse. Anybody can be a certified warehouse as long as you meet our standards. The seed test includes germination and purity. There is a requirement for noxious weed seeds. So when you're purchasing certified seed, there's some assurance there that you're not getting noxious weeds in it. And then we are currently doing 2 different types of certified industrial hemp. We are doing feminized industrial hemp, and we are doing just industrial hemp. You can get either one on your tag, just because we felt like we wanted to give the industry flexibility if they wanted to use a third-party feminization or if they wanted to use ours. So if they're using third-party, you're not going to see that on the tag, whereas if they use the OSU Seed Lab, you will see it on the tag. So this is a screenshot of the standards that we have for feminized industrial hemp, or just industrial hemp in general. You can see that there are very tight standards in terms of inert, weed seed, other varieties, other kinds. The germination has to be at least 85%, which it sounds like we haven't had a problem with yet, at least in the certified seed side. I know the Seed Lab is doing some research on breaking dormancy and along those lines, but again, these are based off of the AOSCA standards. However, they are set a little bit higher in some ways. The feminized seed rate that Oregon has set is 99.9, so we do require 1,000 seed grow out for that. So the seed, so all certified seed has to be sampled by me personally so far. I'm the only one who samples it, and I take it directly from your facility to the OSU Seed Lab. We do have a pretty, we have to take a pretty large sample in order to do all the tests, but we do return a lot of that seed to you. The purity and germination is done there, and the feminization if you request it. So I've had some questions about why I should grow certified seed. Really, the big thing is that the access to market. So some states are requiring you to use certified seed. Florida and Texas, I think, are the big ones that I've heard of. Once you get your seed approved by AOSCA, then you also can do OECD certification, which can open international markets for you. I think that's going to be a big one in the next couple of years. And the second point is the field inspections, where we're out there, we're looking for issues. You have a second set of eyes on, or third set, however many you want, out there looking at that. And so that helps the purchasers feel more confident in your seed. So if you're worried about how you can get a foothold in the marketplace, I've really been recommending certification to people, just because if your reputation isn't built up yet, this is an easy way to, well, not an easy way, but it's a good way to get your reputation up in the marketplace and to have people take a chance on your variety. And of course, I left a placeholder in there that I didn't fill in. Sorry about that. So the other side of certified seed that I think a lot of you are probably more interested in is, why should you plant certified seed? Like, why should you care about this rather than just buying something from the farmer down the road? And really the big thing behind that is the proven genetics. So the varieties have to be accepted by the PPP, a patent, or go through the AOSCA Variety Review Board. So there is data behind that showing that that variety is going to be distinct, uniform, and stable. So that means it's going to produce what you expect it to produce. It's not cross-contaminated with something else. It's not mixed with something else. It's been grown for at least 3 cycles, usually a lot more than that, to make sure that it's going to be uniform for you and not have any of those bad traits, THC, those sort of things that we're concerned about. The other important part is that it's independent third party. So we don't have a stake in whether or not the seed passes. We really hope everybody passes, and we really work with growers to make sure that they're going to pass. But it always breaks our heart a little bit when we have to reject a seed lot. But that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure that the consumer, what that tag says, is what the consumer gets. In Oregon, all of the seed has to be cleaned at a registered seed cleaner. So we go out there and we make sure that they have all the equipment to clean their seed between lots, so you're not getting contamination that way. And we are keeping a chain of custody from that warehouse all the way to the seed lab, so you can be confident that we're taking an accurate representative sample of that seed. And then the other side of that is that AOSCA sets those minimum standards that I've talked about, especially for those germination and feminization rates. So if you get certified feminized seed in Oregon, you know that it has a 99.9% feminization rate, period. That's what the test came back as. The purity and germination are tighter because there are restrictions on it, and there are restrictions on noxious weeds. So a good example of the noxious weed situation is Palmer amaranth, which is a big deal just because it's, in a lot of ways, the seed is indistinguishable from other pigweed species. And right now, Oregon is declared Palmer amaranth free. If we start seeing Palmer amaranth, we lose that ability, and it can affect the entire seed industry, not just with hemp. So buying certified seed, knowing that it was cleaned, it has the noxious weeds exam done on it, and that the field inspector didn't note that there was any Palmer amaranth in the field, is really important to help maintain that status in Oregon. So I've talked a little bit about the OSU Seed Lab, so we're going to go into that a little bit more. So you can see a list of the services that the Seed Lab offers. They do these in all sorts of seeds, not just hemp, so they're really experienced, they're very accurate. They also have researchers on staff, so if you have a question about something that you know, how do I break dormancy, or can I do a dormancy study on this variety? You know, it's not breaking like my other variety I have. You give them a call and they'll help you either set up a test for that, or talk you through how they can help you out with that. So again, all Oregon certified seed is required to use the OSU Seed Lab, but the public, anybody can use their services. And if you have more questions, you can check out their website down below. So if you have more questions about certified seed, you can just Google OSCS seed, and this all these pretty pictures pop up. Towards the bottom of the page, there's a thing that says certified hemp seed, or we certify hemp seed now. If you click on through that, you'll get to sort of our hemp landing page. And there's all sorts of information there. We have a guideline for certifying seed, which is a really good place to start. It lists all of the information I've talked about today, gives you some good starting points. And if you have more questions, always reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you. And I think that's all. If we have any questions now.
Thank you, Rachel. I apologize for mispronouncing your last name earlier.
I didn't even notice.
I think I do it frequently. We had a couple of questions, but I think one of them is likely to be covered by Elizabeth's presentation, so we're going to hold off on that one. The other one was, what was the name of the certifying organization? So I put your that web address and the name, Oregon Seed Certification Service, in the question response. Does anybody else have any questions that they want to type in before we move to Elizabeth?
I do see one on there that says, can a seed producer become a registered seed cleaner? And the answer is, of course. On our website, there is a link for a, I guess I read this as a registered seed cleaner, as a certified seed cleaner. Elizabeth might have the actual requirements for the legality of that, but to become a certified seed cleaner is something separate. If you see on that tag that I showed, the first 3 digits is the warehouse number, which is assigned by seed certification, and that's what you have to have for certified seed. Anyone can do it. It's a simple inspection that we do, and then you are assigned that number at the end.
Thank you. Todd's asking, can you please repeat the isolation distance?
So the isolation distance for, I'm going to go back to that page just so we can all look at it. So the isolation distance from different varieties of hemp is 4 miles, which is this 21,000 feet.
I took away your presenter, so you're going to have to redo that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so and that is all on our website. You can take a look at that. And again, we can reduce that if it is in a greenhouse, and we can talk about some pollen exclusion methods.
Okay. Rachel will be here. So if you think of a question later that you have, she'll pop back on. Now we are going to switch over to Elizabeth Savory, and I will make you presenter again, Elizabeth. And I think you're good to go.
Can you hear me?
I can, yep.
And are we seeing the right slides?
It says hemp seed.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Savory. I manage the seed regulatory programs as well as the plant health program at the Oregon Department of Agriculture. And I will be talking today about what you need to know to buy, sell, and produce hemp seed in Oregon. And I'll highlight the different ODA programs that can assist in the various aspects of being able to do this. So this webinar will cover many different aspects of producing, buying, and selling hemp seed in Oregon. We will provide an overview of hemp seed production, as well as registration and licensing requirements. We'll discuss hemp seed testing, including purity, germination, and phytosanitary testing for export. I'll touch on seed labeling laws and other requirements for selling hemp seed. I'll briefly talk about hemp seed exports and how to navigate the different agencies and requirements for exporting hemp seed to other countries. We'll talk briefly about buying hemp seed, mostly what to look for when you're purchasing seed, and as well as finally wrap up with the seed services that are provided by the ODA and the contact information for those programs, so that you can be on your way to buying, producing, and selling seed in Oregon. So first, we'll start with some definitions. What is hemp seed? So hemp seed is seed that is sold or intended to be sold to registered growers for planting. It's unprocessed or partially processed. It's capable of germination, and it's harvested from hemp plants that have been tested pre-harvest and found to contain no more than 0.3% THC. So throughout this seminar, we have resources available on our website, and I will be highlighting them as we go. And so if you go to oda.direct/hemp seed, you can find a lot of this information. The Federal Seed Act defines hemp as an agricultural seed kind. And what this means is that that's different from vegetable seeds or flower seeds. And the different seed kinds may all have different kinds of rules that generally apply to them. And so for hemp as an agricultural seed kind, any rule or statute at the federal level or even at some state levels that applies to agricultural seed kinds will generally apply to hemp seed. However, there may also be more specific rules that are hemp seed specific, the same way that there will be rules that are specific to other seed kinds. Oregon follows suit, defines hemp also as an agricultural seed kind, and you can find the Oregon seed law and the Oregon revised statutes chapter 633, and then the seed rules are in Oregon Administrative Rule or OAR 603 chapter 56. So this flow chart shows a basic seed production pathway. It highlights some of the basic steps of producing a hemp seed crop, and also the registrations, licensing, or testing requirements you might need. And the idea with this is to show you when in your sort of crop cycle you would want to have these registrations so that you have everything that you need to make sure that you're producing a crop that's in compliance with state law. And so since this is a seed webinar, I'm not going to focus heavily on any of the hemp program specific things, but other than to just mention that they exist, we're really going to focus on seed aspects of the hemp seed production. So prior to any producing any hemp crop, whether it is fiber or flower or a seed, you would want to register with the department. You need a hemp grower registration if you're growing the seed. And then you'll need the hemp seed producer registration. You'd grow your crop, highlighting here that you want to make sure you buy your seed from a reputable source, and we'll talk about that later at the end of the seminar about what to look for there. Prior to harvesting your seed, you'll need to apply for your pre-harvest sampling and testing using a ORLAP accredited laboratory. Again, the crop that the seed is harvested from must test less than 0.3% THC. Next, you'd harvest your hemp seed, clean it, do whatever you need to do there. And then you'd need to have your seed tested for purity, germination, following standards that are set at a national level. And these tests are necessary to label your seed. And then we'll talk about later specifics about all of these in terms of which requirements and what needs to be on your label. If you're going to sell the seed, you'll need a seed license. In Oregon, we issue either wholesale or retail seed licenses, and that depends on how your seed is produced and who your end consumer is. If you're only selling your own seed, you don't need a license, but you still need to follow all the other seed laws. And then finally, that gets to the point of when you can sell your seed. And if you are only selling seed, there are requirements that would apply to you. If you're not taking part in the beginning of this flow chart, you still would need to register to be able to have the seed in your possession as well as have the seed license. So, the rest of this webinar will roughly mirror this sort of order from the beginning of starting to grow your crop to all the way to selling your crop. So we'll start talking about seed purity. So to ensure the consistency on seed labels for seed kinds, and this is for all seed kinds, not just hemp. So these are generally applicable for whatever kind of seed you're producing. So standards have been developed for pretty much every seed kind so that all the seed labs in the US are testing using the same method. And there are even international standards for some seed kinds. So the Association of Official Seed Analysts, or the AOSA, develops the default rules for seed testing in the United States. Some of the standards are also determined by the Federal Seed Act. So on this slide, what we're going to do is go through a purity exam. I know Rachel mentioned that this is required for certification. In general, I think the certification standards are higher than what would be on just a regular uncertified seed lot label, but the method you'd go through is pretty much the same. But the standards vary, so the sample size or the allowable amounts of not pure seed vary depending on what kind of certification or quality you're looking for. So in this picture here, we have some seed. So in the back, the purity. So what we're going to do is separate the seed components, and then on your label, you'd report it as a percentage by weight, adding up to 100%. So in the back of this image, you have your pure seed that's already been separated out from that little clump of seed in the front. So that's pure hemp seed. You'd have other crop, and so these are any other agricultural crop seeds that were found in that lot. So for example, you could have those actually look like amaranth seeds, not as other crop in this picture, but it could be corn or oats or some other agricultural crop. Next, you'd have inert matter. And so this is anything that's not seed or seed that will not grow. So it could be immature seed, it could be stems, leaves, kind of basically any plant material that's in there. I think soil would also be included in inert. And then over here, this picture shows the pure seed that's been separated out. And then over here, you have your weed seeds. Weed seeds can be either your run-of-the-mill regular weed seeds, if you will, or we also look for noxious weed seeds. And so noxious weed seeds are a particular class that are defined by statute or rule. And so the Federal Seed Act defines a noxious weed seed as seeds for which there is no tolerance in vegetable or agricultural seed lots, and it's unlawful to transport or deliver for transport interstate commerce lots that have these seeds in them. In Oregon, we actually have two different seed lists. We have the prohibited noxious weed seed list and the restricted. And so the prohibited is basically there's no tolerance. Whereas for the restricted, there could be a tolerance of, X number of seeds per pound is okay in this seed lot, and it can still be sold. And so these lists for Oregon are available in OAR 603, 056, 205. On your label, you'll need your name of your weed seeds for the noxious and the number per pound. That's required by the Federal Seed Act, also by Oregon law. And I will say one of the tricky things about seed labeling is that every state has their own requirements. And so Every state has the authority to determine which weeds are noxious for them. And we all, as state agencies, do that. So the USDA actually compiles all of these lists for all the states and puts them into a document which we all call the All States Noxious. And so that's a screenshot of the cover of it there on the right of the slide, the state noxious weed seed requirements recognized in the administration of the Federal Seed Act. And so this is updated every time a state updates their noxious weed seed list, and it's available on the USDA website here. And so that can be, the seed labs are very well versed in what is required, what's on all state noxious lists. And that's good because the shippers are responsible for the labeling. So you want to make sure you're using a lab that is good at identifying weed seeds and is providing you with accurate test reports so that you can make sure your label is accurate. If your labels are not accurate, or if there are weed seeds found in your lots, if you're shipping across state lines, the Federal Seed Act applies, and your lot of seed could be, a stop sale could be issued, it could be ordered to be destroyed. Same in Oregon. Oregon has the authority to stop the sale, destroy any lot of seed that has a noxious weed seed in it that's found on our noxious weed seed list. So that's something to be aware of. So another kind of seed testing we look for is germination viability, and these standards are also developed by the AOSA. For hemp seed, what's commonly used is either a grow-out test, which takes longer, or a tetrazolium test, which is a much shorter test that measures seed viability. These are destructive tests, and so I believe the standard is about 400 seeds per lot. And then these are required for your label. So hemp seed testing labs and services. So if you're looking for a lab in Oregon and you're not required to use any of these labs, however, these labs have registered seed technologists or certified seed analysts on staff. So they are highly trained. It's a very long process to become one of those kinds of technicians, and they have to take a really extensive exam, which means they can identify all sorts of seeds and perform these tests. And so the AOSA testing is provided. So you see there's 4 labs. One includes the Oregon State Seed University lab that Rachel mentioned earlier. This handout will be available on our website, and you can see we've got our AOSA testing, purity, weeds, germination, some other testing kinds that the labs can provide. Some labs provide ISTA testing, which we'll talk about later. That could be necessary if you're going to export your seed to another country. We have our contact information, and then some labs offer other tests. And so this is specific for hemp seed, but they all would do this for any seed kind. So once you have all of that testing done, it was done for a reason, and that was to provide information to put on your hemp seed label. And so all seed kinds that are in commerce are required to have a label. The Federal Seed Act has its own set of standards, and Oregon seed law basically mirrors them. And that is true for most states. Most state agricultural departments have done their best to make their labeling requirements mirror the Federal Seed Act to facilitate interstate commerce, but that's not always the case. So it's important to check with other states before you ship your seed into their state to make sure you're meeting all their requirements. But for Oregon, a label like this would suffice for selling seed into Oregon. And so you can see here, you've got your seed kind, your seed variety, a lot number, which is a unique identifier, and this allows the seed lot to be traced all the way back to where it was produced. Weight is required, and then here in the middle section is where you have the information that came from your seed testing, your pure seed, inert, other crop, weed seeds, your germination rate, dormant seed, the origin, And then this test date is the date when the germination testing was done. And so different states will have requirements for how recently the germination test had to have been done before you can, and when you can still sell the seed. So you can't, get a germination test, say in 2015, and use that test to sell your seed in 2020, because likely the germination has dropped significantly by then. And so I believe for hemp seed, which is an agricultural seed kind in Oregon, it's 18 months. But other states might have different requirements, so I highly recommend that you look those up. So again, we have more resources for hemp seed and hemp seed labels available on our hemp seed webpage, and we also have one on labeling, oda.direct seed labeling, with some general labeling information. And why is this so important? This is a statute in Oregon, prohibitive acts. A person may not sell, offer for sale, expose for sale, or transport for use in planting in the state of Oregon any agricultural flower or vegetable seed that bears a label that is false or misleading. And so it is important that whatever is on your seed label, if you are selling your seed, that is accurate and it can be backed up with testing. And it is also important, if you're purchasing seed, that you make sure that your seed has a label and that the information is correct. So all of this, again, is available on a hemp seed handout that we put together. It's also on our website, and I'll be highlighting this handout as well through the rest of my, my slides. It has some basic information about what hemp is, registration information, which we'll talk about later, as well as contact information for our various ODA programs. So that is the first section of my part of the seminar, and I'm happy to stop and take questions here before I move on, if there are any.
I think these questions, Elizabeth, might be for Rachel.
Okay.
At this time, you only certify seeds in Oregon. So Rachel, if you want to jump in for that one.
We only certify seeds in Oregon. However, if you are in another state and you want to certify seed, you can reach out to that certifying organization. If you don't know who that is or you want contact information, I can help you out with that. It's all on the AOSCA website, who certifies in each state.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, can we certify a clone or tissue culture?
So right now we are working on clonal standards. So there's a couple of different things that are coming down the pipe. One of them is you can use clones to produce certified seed. And we're also working that you can produce certified clones, so you can sell those actual plants as certified. Those two standards should be going through the Hemp Advisory Committee next month.
Okay. So the next question is, how, if at all, do seeds for grain and or fiber differ from any of these rules and regulations? And I don't know if that's, yeah.
Yeah, so we have separate, oh, are you talking about certified or for?
Are you talking about certification or for seed laws?
Why don't we answer for both? So okay. Go ahead, Rachel.
So for seed certification, we do have slightly different standards for food, fiber, and grain. Those are also on our website. We have two standards. We have essential oil, which is the feminized CBD, CBGs, and the food, fiber, and grain. Food, fiber, and grain have slightly less isolation requirements, and that's because they're generally not feminized, and they're not quite as concerned about that pollen flow, whereas for the essential oils, they're more concerned about that.
Okay, and then Elizabeth, on your side?
So for my side, I've had the question before, which is why I thought this is what you were asking. What if the purpose of hemp seed changes, whether or not it is which rules apply to it in terms of seed law. Like if you are growing hemp as a vegetable, which I think is very rare, versus as an agricultural seed kind, which is what we'd probably think of as food, as fiber, or for seed production. And the answer is that all seed is treated the same way for hemp seed in terms of the rules and things like germination and labeling. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep going from there.
All right. So we're going to move on to talking about selling seeds. And we're going to break this down into selling seed in Oregon, whether as either an Oregon-based company or as a company based in another state. We'll talk briefly about selling seed to customers in other states and how the Federal Seed Act and other state laws may apply to you. And then finally, we'll talk about exporting seed to other countries and how the ODA can assist you in getting the different kinds of testing and inspections that you need, as well as navigating the APHIS system for getting phytosanitary certificates. So the department has put together a handout, as I mentioned earlier, and this is a chart that comes from that handout. It describes involvement with seed and sales and what kind of registrations you may need that the department can issue. And so across the top or the left column, you've got your involvement with seed and seed sales, and then the registration requirements are in the other column. So we'll just go through this briefly. So if you are a cleaner or a conditioner of agricultural hemp seed, you may need a grower or handler registration, either depending on if you also grew the seed, as well as the hemp seed producer registration. If you are selling or offering for sale only agricultural hemp seed you produce, you could be a grower or a handler, because you could be both. And then you'll need that hemp seed producer registration as well. You won't need anything for the seed part of it, a license that way. If you're a seed broker who doesn't take possession of the seed, and so you're only facilitating sales between growers, between dealers, either way, you do not need to be registered with the hemp department because you aren't taking possession of the seed. You would only need a wholesale seed dealer's license, because that's what you'd be considered under Oregon seed law. And so the agency issues two different kinds of seed dealer's licenses, retail and wholesale, and they sort of depend on who's producing your seed and who your end consumer is. In general, wholesale seed dealers are contracting with growers or purchasing seed from growers and then marketing it and selling it either to other wholesalers or to the retail market. And retailers are nursery centers, big box stores, people like that, or entities like that who are selling seed to the direct consumer. An example from another seed kind that I think is helpful when thinking about our licensing is if you think about grass seed. So you've got growers who are growing grass seed. So they're selling or offering for sale the seed that they themselves produce. So they are not required to have a seed license of any kind. Generally, they're contracting or selling directly to wholesale seed dealers. And so think of like who you'd see in a store. You'd see Scott's or Pennington, for example. So those are your wholesale seed dealers. They are contracting with the growers. They are marketing and selling the seed to stores like Lowe's or Home Depot or Bi-Mart. And so in those stores would be the retailers, and they would each have a retail license for each of their locations. So that's how I think about the seed licenses. And then this final bottom part of this thing is like if you're a reseller, it kind of depends on if you're taking possession of the seed or not, whether or not you're a handler or not, and then again, whether or not you're a retailer or not. So if you are not taking a possession of the seed and you're selling it, we'd consider you a broker. You only need the wholesale seed dealer's license. If you have possession, and depending on who you're selling it to, that's going to determine whether or not you're a retail seed dealer or a wholesale seed dealer. So, pardon me. Excuse me. So another thing to know, oops, is that the state of Oregon does not recognize seed licenses that are issued by other states. So if you are an out-of-state seed, involved in out-of-state seed sales, so if say you're in Colorado or Kentucky or New York, you will need an Oregon seed license in order to sell seed in our state. And that is true for any seed kind, not just hemp. And then the final point I'd like to make about seed sales is that there are growers out there who will only sell the seed that they themselves produce. And under our current rules, they do not need to be licensed. They don't need a seed license. However, just because they do not need a license does not mean they do not need to also follow all the other seed rules. And so just because you don't have a license does not mean that you don't have to label your seed or have it tested or follow all of the other seed laws. So I think that's an important point, is that anyone involved in seed sales is required to follow all the labeling requirements and laws of the Oregon seed law. So with that, I'm going to move on to interstate hemp seed sales. And I will say I don't have a ton of information on this, excuse me, specific to any state, but just some general statements to be aware of. And that is, every state has their own hemp seed, and seed sales registrations and licensing requirements. You will likely find 50 different versions of what you need to know to sell seed in other states. And it's very important to check with the State Department of Agriculture in those states before selling seed in their state to make sure you're in compliance with all those rules. And again, too, if you are selling seed across state lines, you not only have to deal with the rules of the state into which you're selling, but also the Federal Seed Act applies. And so in general, if you meet Federal Seed Act requirements, you most of the time will meet the requirements of other states, because state departments of ag have worked hard to harmonize their state laws with the Federal Seed Act to facilitate trade, but that's not always 100% the case. So it's very important just to know the rules of the state into which you're selling so that your seed is not confiscated or destroyed if it's found to not be in compliance. And so just some examples, and I think Rachel touched on this earlier, that Florida is one state that's requiring all hemp seed be certified. And so this is from one of their web pages. A licensee may only use hemp seeds and cultivars certified by a certifying agency. And so that would actually mean that most Oregon seed producers would not be able to sell seed into Florida, because I think there's only 2 or 3 that are producing certified seed at this time. And then this bottom example is for selling hemp seed in Minnesota. And so you can see, to sell hemp seed in Minnesota, you need a seed permit. You have to label your seed as required. You have to provide a copy of your hemp program license, say from Oregon, to the Minnesota Department of Ag. Have your THC testing. These aren't unique requirements, but Minnesota is requiring these things, whereas other states might not ask. And then they have a different seed permit system than Oregon does. They call their seed licenses labeling permits, and they have different rules than we do, and they do not have, we have a single fee for a license, and they charge by 100 pounds of seed for that license. So these are just 2 examples that I was able to find pretty quickly. So just be aware that if you're selling seed into other states, that you just need to make sure you know, pardon me, the rules for those states. So with that, we'll switch to exporting hemp seed. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Again, this is from that handout that I mentioned earlier. It has contact information on it, so that after this webinar, if you're looking to export seed, you can call the Plant Health Program and we will assist you. Another thing that's on here that's important is this website here, the Phytosanitary Certificate Issuance and Tracking System, or PSIT. That's the system where you'd get your phytosanitary certificate. It's run by USDA APHIS. And then the ODA Plant Health Program information for applying for different kinds of phytosanitary testing. So I'm going to start with some basics on phytosanitary requirements, because these are the cornerstone of applying for a phytosanitary certificate. Your seed needs to meet various pest and disease standards that are set by the country to which you are sending your seed. And so the first thing is every commodity, whether seed or not, requires a visual inspection. In our seed lab, we call them P&Ds, or pest and disease exams. Some countries may also require in-season field inspection. And so this is during the growth of the crop prior to harvest, looking for different diseases. Sometimes you may need a testing of the lot that's being shipped. You may need a declaration that the area where the product was produced is free from a pest or a disease. There are more formal declarations called pest-free areas or pest-free places of production. These have a higher standard that needs to be met. And then there may also be treatment requirements. And so one example I can give you is if you are interested in exporting hemp seed to Australia. So you'd need the P&D, because every seed lot would need that. Australia actually requires a pest-free area for Pseudomonas syringae cannabina, which is actually a standard that the Oregon can't meet. So they have an alternative where they have a hot water treatment requirement. And so that is sort of an example of how all the things that you would need to export your seed to Australia. And actually, you'll need one more thing that I'll talk about in a later slide, which is an ISTA orange certificate. And so exporting seed has multiple steps you may need to go through, and different agencies and different seed testing labs that you may need to speak with. And we are more than happy to help anyone interested in exporting hemp seed navigate all of that. So once you've figured out all your phytosanitary requirements, you can apply for this phytosanitary certificate. And this is issued through a USDA website and accompanies your shipment. It's an official document that verifies your commodity has been inspected and has been found to be relatively free of pests and pathogens. The requirements, so those phytosanitary requirements from the previous slide, they're determined by the importing country. And only accredited officials in the US can determine whether or not your shipment meets those requirements. So this is just a slide that highlights what a P&D looks like. I show this because I want to highlight that it's a non-destructive exam, and we can return any extra seed, actually all the seed to you once we've done the inspection. Basically, similarly to what I showed you earlier in the purity and germination slide, we basically visually inspect the entire lot of seed. However, it is different from the purity in that we're not going to provide you with any percentages for a label. This is merely for the phytosanitary certificate, and we are going to look for soil contaminants because any contaminant level over 2%, that commodity can't be shipped. We're also going to look for weed seeds because every country, like every state, has a list of weeds that they do not want in their country. And so those could prevent that lot from being exported if that country has a prohibition for those seed kinds. So these ISTA certificates are also maybe required. So ISTA, or the International Seed Testing Association, is an independent organization that develops seed testing methods, and it accredits labs to do testing that is accepted all over the world. And so some countries, Australia, for example, will require an ISTA certificate for any seed lot that's coming into their country, hemp or otherwise. And so the accredited labs, and so remember I showed that slide previously that had that list of labs, and all the labs on that list can do ISTA testing. And they are credited. There's two different colors. We call them orange. They're orange and blue. And so the orange is kind of a little bit higher standard because of the sampling guidelines that must be followed. It represents the seed lot as it will be shipped, and only ISTA authorized samplers can sample the seeds. Some ODA seed samplers are ISTA authorized samplers. And then I think the other labs may also employ some people who are ISTA authorized. And then the blue certificates have a little bit lower standard because the samples are supplied by the customer and they're not required to be these ISTA authorized samplers. So the type of the certificate that you need will be determined by the importing country as well. So that is all I have on exporting. And just to summarize briefly, it's all up to the country where the seed is going, the requirements. The general pathway and the people that you'll need to know to figure out how to do that are the same. You'll have to talk to APHIS to get a PCID account. The P&Ds are done generally by ODA staff, but whether or not there's additional testing is all determined by the country to which the seed's going. So I'm going to take a quick break here and see if there's any questions, and then we'll move on to the final section.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Does the OSU Seed Lab do the visual inspection for phytosanitary? I was told ODA works with AgriSeed for that.
So in general, State Department of Agricultural labs like the ODA lab are authorized to do visual inspections for any commodity. The APHIS recognizes State Department of Ag labs as well as APHIS labs kind of automatically to have the authority to do that. The National Seed Health System can also accredit some labs to do phytosanitary inspection and testing. And so I believe that AgriSeed testing is accredited by NSHS to do that. I do not think the OSU Seed Lab is. However, if you go to the NSHS website, you can find their list of accredited labs. And we do work with AgriSeed often on hemp seed because they do some of the treatments that we need to witness for exporting as well. So that's how we work with AgriSeed. But we can also witness treatments at OSU if we were asked to.
Okay. And then another question, can we import hemp seed?
I believe so. I do not know, however, what the requirements are, but if you wanted to find out, on the USDA website, there is a section on importing seeds. That's where you would find that information. I do believe that we do get a decent amount of seed from Canada, but for other countries, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's not something I'm familiar with either.
Yeah.
I think that is it for now. If you want to move on to your last part or take a break for a drink of water.
No, I'm fine. Thank you. I apologize to everyone for my voice going, but I only have a few more slides, so I think I can get through it. So I apologize. So I'm just going to move on. Oops, maybe I will. To just a couple of things about buying hemp seed, and then I'll wrap up with some ODA contact information to get some of the services that I talked about previously. And the reason I like to highlight this is because as the seed regulatory official for the state, a lot of the complaints and a lot of the feedback that I receive from people is that they bought something that wasn't what they thought it was. For hemp, it's generally either related to the THC being much higher than they thought it was going to be, or the feminization rate. And I think a lot of that has to do with one, this being such a new crop for Oregon, and people being very excited about it, and also just not knowing what to look for to make sure that they were buying quality seed. And so these are just a few points to highlight that you can look for to make sure that the seed that nothing's 100%, but at least if you follow these steps, you can be more assured that you're getting a good product. So one is the company grower you're purchasing from registered. So for Oregon hemp seed producers, you can go to our hemp website, oda.direct/hemp. And on the left column, there is like a link you can click that says search issued hemp registrations. And if you look there, you can see all of the registered hemp growers in the state for this that are current. And so that's one place you can look. The next thing I would say is are there regulatory tests for the plants the seed was harvested from? And so don't be afraid if you're buying hemp seed to ask to see those COAs, and make sure they're from the plants, not from the seed. And so these should come from an ORLAP accredited lab. And so that list is also available on the website. And I believe they should all say regulatory test on them. You want to look for that and not just a general COA from the seed. That's not going to be very informative for you. For seed sourced from other states, I recommend checking with the State Department of Agriculture for information. Many states, if you go on their hemp websites, they will provide you a list of everybody in their state that is approved to produce hemp seed. And so you can find that list on their webpage and contact those people. If the person you're purchasing from is not on that list, I would be aware that, you know, they may not be producing that seed legally, and it may not be the seed that you want to purchase. Check the label. And so again, the seed should be labeled. A label means something on seed. So you definitely want to know what you're purchasing, and read the label. Don't buy seed without a label. And again, if you, just like you could ask for those regulatory tests for the THC level, you could ask to see the tests for the purity and the germination. That is a very common practice in other seed industries. Grass seed, for example, is one that I'm very familiar with. You know, Oregon is the #1 producer of cool season grass seed in the United States. And so we have a lot of seed dealers, and I will tell you, if you speak to any of them, they always want to see the purity in the germ before they're going to buy that lot of seed. It should be from a lab with a registered seed technologist or a certified seed analyst on staff. And so again, that handout that I showed you previously, those labs all have highly trained staff who know how to follow the AOSA rules and are accredited to do so. Look for germination dates. Don't buy seed with expired germ. You're not going to get a very good crop if half of your seed doesn't germinate. And then finally, keep a copy of the label for each lot you purchased, as well as your receipt. So if there is ever a problem and you need to call the ODA and have an investigation done, you have all the records. You know, you have proof that you had a label and then the seed that you purchased wasn't labeled or wasn't what it said it was. Oregon has a very strong seed law, and we can go after and investigate those kinds of things. And then I think Rachel touched on this, so I'm not going to belabor it too much, but this word certified, what does it mean? And it can mean a lot of things. Like she mentioned phytosanitary certificates. And so you've learned now that those have a very specific meaning for exports. You might also, you know of organic certification, and there are entities in Oregon that will certify hemp as organic. One way to find out if your producer is producing organic hemp is to look at the Organic Integrity Database, and the link is here. Seed certification. I won't talk about this too much because Rachel already covered it in great detail. But you know, we have a seed cert program, and we have 2 certified seed producers in Oregon. And other states check with their State Department of Agriculture or their state certifying agency. In some states, it is the Department of Ag. In some, like Oregon, it's a university. And then some states, it's also a private entity. And then I just have this little thing here that I got off of a hemp bag where it said the AOSA has certified our Midwest seed at 99.96% pure with a 98% germination rate. And I'll just say that doesn't mean anything. The AOSA doesn't certify seed. It doesn't even accredit labs. It develops standards. They don't actually certify seed. So just be aware that not everything on the label is true. And hopefully with my seminar today and Rachel's presentation earlier, you are a little bit more informed about what to look for and what all of this means when you're buying or selling your hemp seed. That's all we can hope for. So finally, I'm just going to talk very briefly about ODA and some of the services that we provide for the seed industry and whom you can contact if you're in need of these services. We provide sampling, verification, testing. We do field inspections. We issue phytos, export assistance. We do outreach and education, and we enforce the seed law. If you're interested, if you need seed sampling, and so we only sample hemp seed under at certified warehouses. Otherwise, we do all of our testing on the shipment that's brought to our lab, but this is our seed sampling and verification crew here. And so for verification services that are generally applicable to hemp seed, or at least the ones that I've seen us perform so far, generally involve treatments. Like generally hot water treatment to Australia has been the big one, but we can also, if your seed requires fumigation or a lot number change or any other kind of verification like that, we can provide that witnessing if you need official documentation. The seed samplers also do ISTA sampling and deliver to, I believe, both OSU as well as AgriSeed so that you can get that testing done. This slide just has contact information. So we've got our hemp program, the seed regulatory program, the plant health program, which is what does the phytosanitary testing and issues the phytos, as well as our cannabis policy coordinator who is running the show today, Sunny. With that, I would just like to say thank you, and again, stop to take questions. And that is the end.
Thank you. So we did have a question confirming you can't certify hemp seeds if you're a wholesaler, i.e. did not produce them but have possession of them.
So I'm assuming they're talking about seed certification and not any of the phytosanitary ones, but if you already have seed in your possession, we cannot certify it because we have to do those field inspections prior to it being harvested.
Perfect. And Tyler, going back to yours, I think Rachel answered it. Can a seed producer become a registered seed cleaner? And what are the requirements to be a registered cleaner? I just want to make sure. I think there's some licensing on ODA's part for that. I know a hemp handler would be required from the hemp program. And then what would be required from your program, Elizabeth?
We don't do any certification of warehouses. That would all be from OSU.
But you do you license seed cleaners? That's all
No.
through OSU?
No.
See, this is why I get confused. So glad you ladies do this.
Yeah, so I think if you're a seed cleaner, you just need to be a hemp handler from ODA's point of view. And if you want to handle certified seed, then you need to be a certified warehouse from OSU's point of view, I think.
Okay.
That is correct. And Sunny, I dropped the link for our warehouse application form in the chat if you want to. I don't think I can do everybody.
Perfect. I can send that out when we send this out as well. Another question. What things must a seed cleaner be able to demonstrate in order to become a certified cleaning warehouse?
So the seed warehouse inspection is pretty straightforward. We come out there and we walk through your cleaning process from start to finish. We want to make sure that you can clean all of your equipment in between seed lots. One of the big ones with like grass seed cleaners is the elevators. You have to be able to open up your elevators, either have air or a vacuum accessible to clean that out. Many of the hemp seed producers that we see are on a much smaller scale. So we just want to make sure that you understand all of that. We also walk through the Federal Seed Act requirements with you for how you have to retain your records. That includes the field that it came from, the grower, the incoming weight, the screening weight, the clean weight, and you have to keep the records for 3 years from the final disposition of the seed lot, and you have to keep a seed sample for 1 year from the final disposition of the seed lot. So we walk through all of that much slower. Make sure you're comfortable with how you label certified seed, because we do have a special lot number system, how you attach seed tags to the bag. We go through all of that with you at that time.
Awesome. Tyler says, perfect, thanks. I really appreciate the work that both of your programs are doing to legitimize this industry and get away from the person with, you know, the baggie of the best seed ever. I think that will go a long way to making this a viable industry in the state of Oregon and in the country. And it'll set us up. I think there's a strong desire to set that standard and that bar high in Oregon so that we can be an example to other states and other countries. And I think the work that you're doing is feeding into that and helping set that bar very high for the Oregon hemp industry. So again, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody participating today. This presentation will be available on our website hopefully next week. We will send out a notification to the hemp listserv. So again, if you are not signed up for that, it is oda.fyi/subscribe. If you're registered with us, somebody on your registration is receiving those emails already. And with that, we will say thank you, and I hope that you have a great afternoon.